So the Springboks have just got themselves the win over Scotland, and now we move on to next weekend where they do take on the English. And in this video, we're going to be trying our best to predict what Rassie Erasmus will be going with for his lineup selection. Now, of course, up against the Scottish, it was a very experimental side, a certain 7-1 split off the bench as well. But this game, perhaps we'll see a few more familiar faces from the Rugby Championship, the guys getting more minutes. But to help me in this venture, it is going to be Tim. First of all, mate, a win up against Scotland in the first game of the November Internationals. Pretty happy with that overall, or were there certain moments in the game that didn't quite go the way you hoped?
Yeah, like I'm content with the game, I'd say. I'm not like completely happy with it, but I'm content. You know, again, it's the result that matters the most, and we got that at the end of the day. And yeah, there was definitely a period, definitely within the second half, where I thought Scotland deserved to kind of like level the scoreline in a way, because they just kept hammering that Springbok defense. But you could also make the argument the Springbok defense kind of held their own and kind of just stopped them in their tracks. So they did well overall, I think, the Springboks. And again, going into this game against England, I mean, it's going to be a big game. I think it'll be a very big game. But honestly, I said this actually, I think in our preview actually for the Scotland game. I actually said the Scotland game was, in my mind, the difficult fixture to look at, the most difficult one, because I just had a feeling that they would kind of show to us that they're not going to just be messed around with, and they did prove that throughout the game. So this England one will be a tough test, and again, they'll be hurting. So yeah, Springboks got to be careful.
And like you said, the Springboks now, that is 2 games in a row up against Scotland that they haven't conceded a try, although Scotland very close. They had a disallowed one at least in this contest. But yeah, up against the English, a side that did concede 42 points in their last game. Springboks, they've got a lot of ability throughout their side, but I am going to ask you, Tim, who have you selected in the front row? Any major switches here, or are you going safe with your choices?
Well, I have made one switch to what they went with in that Scotland game. I have gone with Oxenchair at number 1. Following him, I've then gone with Bongi Mbonombi at number 2. And then this is where I made the switch. I've taken out Thomas du Toit, the try scorer, and put in Vincent Koch in to start this game. I think it's one of those where Thomas du Toit, look, he actually had a solid game. Nothing wrong with it, really. Again, he did kind of a fortunate try, really, in kind of how it happens. But no, I just think Vincent Koch is just a bit more experienced, and I think I want to have a bit more experience to start off the game. So that's the reason why I've gone with that front row.
Alrighty, well, I have actually decided to stick with what they went with up against the Scottish. I've gone number 1, Oxenchair, number 2, Bongi Mbonombi, and then I have given Thomas du Toit another opportunity. I thought he was overall really strong up against the Scottish, but then at the same time, it did seem to be that bench when the scrums started to really dominate. Exactly, yeah. We saw a lot of scrums throughout this game, that is for sure, and that is one thing that I think Scotland, if they had a choice, would want to change from that performance, is how many times they had to pack down. But overall, like Mbonombi, it looked a little bit shaky early on for his lineouts, but then from there, they seemed to regain that composure. And Oxenchair, honestly, probably one of his more quiet games, but still did exactly what he really needed to. But now we move on to the locking duo. Now, there are big question marks around these two positions, not so much this first one. Number 4, I've gone Ebenezabeth, once again getting himself the man of the match, making that crucial tackle on Duan van der Merwe as he broke the line, as well as getting fired up, it seemed, at times. I mean, Xander Fagerson going back-to-back. It's something about tight head props that Eben doesn't seem to like, it would seem, because, of course, Alan Alatoa back in the day also ended up almost scrapping him. But number 5, this is where I've actually decided that Rassie will stick with Franco Mostert. Now, it's a bit of a risk just because Mostert, I think everyone will admit, he had probably his worst game we have seen in a Springbok kit for quite some time, if not maybe ever. But he's just back from injury. So at the end of the day, it's going to take a bit of time to find that rhythm once more. And we've got to remember, it has been such a long time since we've seen Mostert in that Springboks kit. So I've decided to keep him together with Etzebeth. Plus, I feel my loose forward trio will then gel it all together quite nicely.
That's fair. And I have also gone with the same duo as yourself there, along with Ebenezabeth number 4 and Franco Mostert number 5. I think I was considering actually putting RJ Snyman in to start this game, but it's one of those where I just, we remember, guys, we're also thinking in the minds of Rassie here, and he hasn't done it. I think he's done it once, I think, or like maybe never really in ever to kind of put Etzebeth and RJ Snyman together. So it just seems like that's not going to happen in this test. And you'd expect Franco Mosca to get more minutes because he does need it, really. Because like you said, he is coming back from injury and he was a bit rusty. I'll give him that. But at the same time, he's going to build off that performance and just get better. So I just think that combination and that duo is what Razzie will go with.
Righty, so now I wonder if you have done the same thing in your loose forward trio as myself, seeing as you have stuck with those same locks. But I assume you've got 3 changes here. And I will ask you the question, though, out of the 3 who started in the last game that we have both probably sacked, who do you feel did the best?
I definitely wouldn't say Quagga Smith. I think he was the one where he didn't have a good game overall. I think Quagga Smith to start off it. He's more, again, he's seen as one of the best impact players in the world. Just put him on the bench, really. That's kind of the way I see it. But look, you got to give him a game kind of start and all that. So I understand. But I think who else was there? It was Michael van Staden, Eric Lowe. I mean, I don't think any of the 3 really stood out really to me, like where they were amazing. But if I had to say, the player that I saw the most of the ball was probably Michael van Staden. So I'd probably say van Staden. But again, I'm unfortunately, like you've kind of already said, I've made 3 changes here, kind of the expected 3 changes. And I've gone with Sia Khaleesi, number 6, Peter Sifatoy, number 7, and Jasper Wiese at the number 8 spots. I think you can just tell off the as soon as they come off the bench, they are just another level in terms of what they give you. So, and particularly against the English, you're going to need to be physical. So that's why I've come with that trio.
Yeah, Chandler Cunning himself. No Tom Curry, of course, due to his head knock that he had in the last game, but also having Ben Earl. Those guys love getting in the breakdowns, love bringing a bit of extra physicality. I'll be honest, when I look through at the loose forward trio that they selected up against Scotland, I wonder whether or not, of course I don't want to try and correct Rassie Erasmus because I feel like that is pretty hard to do, but would it not have made more
sense? Get the pitchforks.
to just put Eldrick Lowe at number 8 and Quagga at 7? Would that not have worked, seeing as Eldrick Lowe has been playing number 8 throughout the season? I feel like that was probably the biggest selection blunder, I guess you could say, in terms of Rassie's side, is the fact that maybe there were just a couple little fine tunes that needed to be made to then sort out the side. But yeah,
I think there's another one, by the way. I think there was also another one. Yeah. We'll get into that later, but just, yeah.
Poor Jaden Hendricks, eh? We will mention him, of course, in a very short moment. But yeah, the same trio for myself, Sia Khaleesi, Peter Sifatoy, and Jasper Wiese, all bringing their own kind of impact off the bench. I'm not too sure what it was that got Khaleesi just above his eye, but it certainly swelled up quite a bit by the end of it. Hopefully he will be all right to go for the next week game. But moving on to that 9-10 combination, Jaden Hendricks, I've got to feel sorry for him because up until this game, a lot of people had him as their starting 9. And I feel like we saw in a pressure situation, and I don't really know what it was. I feel like it's a bit different, but similar in some regards to what happened with Cortez Aratama up against the Irish, how the forwards were putting a little bit more pressure on him. Exactly. And then from there, it was just that little bit of panic for the youngster. But some of the times that he was dropping the ball, he was just wide open by himself. And yeah, you got to feel for that man. But I have made the switch as the number 9. Now I have got Cobus Reinach. I've decided to throw him back in. I consider Grant Williams, but don't we just love a bit of versatility, Tim? So I had to keep him there as the man off the bench. So Cobus Reinach, and number 10, here we go, Marnie Libok as the starting fly half in this game. I feel like from your nods, you've probably done the same. It just seems like a Rassie move, doesn't it?
It has
Chuck
to be.
Libok back in.
Yeah. It has to be. It's one of those where it was the first change I made in my side because the way I even saw the games that South Africa has, the only difficult one to choose at 10 is really the Wales game because no matter what, I saw Andre Pollard was going to be the 10 for the Scotland game. Manny Libok is perfect, I think, for the England game. The Wales one is where you can kind of experiment, so you can kind of see. That's where it just depends, I guess, what happens on the day and how Rassie feels. But for this game, you're definitely going with Manny Libok. I think it's just in his favor, really. And I was kind of reminded back towards when he played at Twickenham. I mean, this is obviously not against England, but against the All Blacks, kind of the last time that they have played at Twickenham, he was amazing in that game. So I would like to think Manny will be the guy in that number 10 jersey. Number 9, similar to you, I have made the change there and not put Jenny Hendricks there. I just think it was just one of those days where he just, like you said, he just got disrupted too many times and just kept knocking on the ball that it was just very repetitive. And at that point, you just got to, I kind of said it very early on. I was like, guys, why are you making that change early for Grant Williams? He's going to impact the game. So I kind of wish they gave him a bit more time, Grant Williams, but it was still, it was just one of those games where you look back at it and It can't do much.
Was that because of the 7-1 split, though? The fact that they couldn't risk losing that one back replacement if anyone else picked up an injury in the last 30
not
minutes,
really.
do you think?
No. I don't really think so, because at the same time, this is where like they could take that risk, because like you could say that they didn't do it as late because the one player that you can consider as a back is Quagga Smith. They had to take off. So it was really when they took him off, that's when the risk comes in. But at that point in time, like it wasn't like where I was saying then make that switch with it was more a bit after. I think it was like 15 minutes after. I was like, okay, make the switch now. But they waited like at least 10 more minutes. I was like, okay. But no, with the number 9, I haven't actually gone with Kobus Ronick. I originally had him in, but I have gone with Grant Williams. I just think he deserves it for what I saw in that game. And I'd like to see Grant Williams and Manny Libbok. I think that would be kind of a nice duo to see that. I don't think we've seen that in a while, actually, because we saw Kobus Ronick and Manny Libbok, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was the combination we had. Was the combination we had in that Argentina game, the last one? Or was it Hendricks and Libbok? Because I think that's maybe what it was.
Either way, it was Libbok at 10, though, wasn't it? But
Libbok was at 10, yeah. But either way, look, I think Grant Williams deserves a start. He deserves a start there. So that's my 9-10 combination.
Righty, so just a little switch there. So far we've got the switch in the tight head prop and the switch in that number 9 jersey. Moving on to the rest of the backline. Now, we could probably rapid fire these guys.
I was going to say this. We could have the exact same.
There are certain changes that will be made, but also some great performances up against Scotland for certain players in the backline. But for my centre pairing,
who do
you think didn't play well?
It was a bit like...
To be fair, Lukanyuam I would have as didn't go well in this game.
That's what I was going to say. I think he had to be fair, Andres Eisen, he looked good at times, but he just wasn't, like, it was more about like just moving forward, and he wasn't moving as forward as much as I thought he would do. By the way, he's a big player, so I kind of expecting a lot of him. So, but no, he had a solid game, I think, Andres Eisen. Lukanyuam, I thought there was times where he could have made a pass better or two. Like he had one knock on, I think, earlier on. That I was like, okay, you got to do better in that situation. But yeah, I thought he had a very kind of average game, I'd say, with Kanye. Nothing against him, just more that like it just didn't go in his favor. But of course, I think we can both agree that we've probably both gone with Damien Delande and Jesse Krill.
Yeah, seemed like the safe bet, didn't it?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I feel like those two stylistically up against England will work very nicely, although it depends on what the English plan actually is. Are they going to switch Lawrence and Slade back? Because, of course, they didn't go as well when they were switched in that last performance up against the Australians.
Honestly, they need a change there. I honestly think they should switch. Who would you bring
in if you had the quick fire chance of one little switch? I think you keep Lawrence. I think Slade is the one that's hurting them a little bit. But because he's got a left boot, they like to keep him in.
But this is the thing. It depends. Who like you have to remind me here. Which players can they put in that center position for England? Because they don't actually have a lot of cover in that center position that I can think on my top of the head. Like
it is actually a little bit limited. I feel like they've got a lot of eggs in the one basket of Slade and Lawrence. They could give Fraser Dingwall a chance. Didn't Dingwall play in the centres? He all right?
Yeah, again, it's nothing exciting there. This is the thing. Like maybe you do have to stick with the same combo then. Like it's just more. I think for England, they just have to worry more from a defensive point of view. So do you think Ollie Lawrence and Slade, or do you think another player will be better defensively than those two? Because I don't think they have anything good. I don't think there's anything wrong from an attacking sense that they have to worry about. It's just more from a defensive point that England. Yeah. So
I think
I don't know what they'll do.
You've got to match Dialendi with Ollie Lawrence, because if you put Dialendi up against Henry Slade, I feel like Dialendi just runs over him all day.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like even like Jesse Krill, like those two are. It's the best combo in world rugby in terms of a central combination. So it's going to be a tough day anyway for any opposition. But that is definitely the duo. I think we both agree on that has to play in this game.
So now we move on to our back three, which I think we will also have 3 changes in. Even though I would say, in fact, you'd say 3 out of 3 actually had a really good game here. Kane and Moody under the high ball did extremely well. That was one thing that Scotland couldn't really get going, was retaining their own kicks, and actually really struggled to get South Africa's kicks half the time as well. Makazole Mapimpi getting himself the double in this contest, and then Billy LaRue. I actually was going to give him man of the match for myself. I thought he was really good at the back, the cutout passes, the little cross kicks as well. It seemed like he was throwing back the years for Billy there, but he'll probably get taken out of the lineup for this week in terms of the starting side. So for myself, I've gone Kurtley Arendse, number 11, number 14, Cheslin Colby, and number 15, Apalele Fasi. Now, there is a chance that maybe one of those three retain their spot. So I'm going to ask you, Tim, if you had to retain the spot of one individual out of those three, because you've got the same as me, don't you, in these selections?
Yeah, I definitely have the same as you. That's for sure. That's actually a tough decision because no matter what, Cheslin Kobe's in, so that's a guarantee. But it's more about if you put Willie LaRue or Mpimpi in, because honestly, Kurtley he wasn't amazing in the Rugby Championship. It's tough. It is a tough call. Like again, Mpimpi is such a good player, and he's just so solid and just scoring tries that's probably the switch I would do. I think, like, because again, like you have Fassi, but I want to see him get more time. Like Will LaRue, we have to remember this is like the long-term plan. Like Will LaRue isn't going to play in the next World Cup. I'll be very surprised if that happens because they have a player like Damian Williams, who again unfortunately just wasn't available for this All Nations, but would have probably played a 15 in that game if he was. So I think Fassi I would keep, Kobe, and then I would actually put Mpimpi in there if I had to. But I think for now, I'm like you. I'm still sticking with Kurtley Arendse, so just to be clear.
Like, that's the thing. It's so hard when you've got so many world-class backs. And it's weird to think that it actually gets harder the more good players you have because, of course, a lot of people have their favourites. People are going Makazole Mpimpi. What does he have to do to get selected? Every time he's played in the last little while, he's scoring tries. Yet every time that Kurtley Arendse is back, they put him out there. So, yeah, I could see them really developing two solid teams here throughout November, and I think the game up against the Welsh, like we could even see a third developmental side added in a little bit as well with the guys.
I don't think so.
I think you do a mix and match of the best of the both. You know, we see maybe Jordan Hendrickse get the chance in that game. We see Cameron Honeycomb in that lineup as well.
Yeah, he definitely. I'd like to see him. If he can. That's probably the game they'll target. And it's kind of funny in a way because that's the team that he was meant to, I guess, play for if he was going to get the opportunity or not in the box. But we'll see what happens.
Right, so now we will move on to the bench. Now, Tim, you got the 7-1 split this week, or have you gone with something different?
I've gone with the 6-2. I've gone with the 6-2 for this game. I think I actually was considering 7-1 again because, again, it actually, in this game against England, I actually think would be suited to play against England, the 7-1 split. But at the same time, like you also want to give players an opportunity in these automations. So I have kind of gone back off the idea of a 7-1, and also just kind of what we saw against Scotland. Like we were talking, kind of off camera, just saying how for probably the first 15 minutes of the game when the bomb squad came on, Scotland matched them easily, if not better, actually, in that kind of bomb squad in terms of when they came on. In terms of the performance, but of course, as the game grew on, legs get tired of Scotland, and they just kind of bulldozed them really as the game for the kind of remaining minutes. So, yeah, look, it's one of those where I think you've got to go with a 6-2 split, I think, for this game.
I've got a 5-3 for this contest.
Wow, so you really want to give Backs a chance. Okay. You really want to give Backs a chance.
I feel like the thing is, the dominance that they got at the scrum time, I don't believe was down to the men outside of that front row. Yes, it helps, but at the end of the day, we know how strong of a scrummager Gerhard Stennekamp,
I'm interested to see
Malcolm
who you
Marx.
choose then.
I do think that Springboks dominance at scrum time does come from that really good front push. They've got the chemistry there with those three. They've brought them on in all the games, and they always dominate the reserves. So I just think that with the size of the Springbok 4-pack that, no matter who they had behind them, they were still going to get the big push.
Yeah.
But for yourself, Tim, front row replacements, have you got the same three? You won't do because you got Vincent Koch in the starting side.
Exactly, yeah. No. So I have gone for myself, Malcolm Marx, as the replacement hooker. Following him, this is where I've gone with Gerhard Stennekamp. And then, of course, I've then gone with Thomas du Toit. I just think I'd like to see that combination. I think that's kind of what I wanted to see originally in Scotland. We'll see if they do it again for this one or if they just stick to what they had before. So we'll find out.
So for myself, I've got Malcolm Marx, Gerhard Stennekamp as my first two. Number 18, this is where I once again have Vincent Koch. Now, I feel bad for Wilco Lowe, but I do think once again, more than likely, the Welsh game will be when we get to see that man get his opportunity. At the end of the day, this is still England. And even if they've lost their last couple games, they are a side that scored 37 points last week and looked pretty good while doing it at times.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for a few errors defensively, maybe that could have been a whole different story. So, my other two forward replacements, seeing as I've gone with the 5-3, I've got Arge Snyman as my number 19. And number 20, back to where I believe he is his strongest, I've gone Quagga Smith as the number 20. I just don't think starting worked too well for him. And yes, it's his 50th game, so Rassi was always going to give him a bit of a nod there, which is something we actually missed for our prediction last week. We didn't quite get that one right, but Quagga is best in that last 20 minutes. When everyone else is starting to tire, he always manages to step it up to that next level and just causes problems when he gets over the ball in the breakdown. He just seemed a little lost in the starting side. But for yourself, 3 replacements. Have you got those 2 plus 1?
I do. So, of course, I have gone with RJ Snyman, Quagga Smith, but he's my 21 in this scenario. And for my 20, that's where I've gone with Marco van Staden. So It's one of those where I was actually considering Eric Lowe in this situation because the way that the Boks may play against England, and I'm just considering like the loose forwards that they have, you may need a lot of like just kind of big guys actually. And I think Eric Lowe, I kind of like, maybe he would be a better player.
Is there going to be a
I was considering, but no, I'm sticking to my guns. It's what I've put on the paper here. So I'm going with Marco van Staden there. And then, of course, Quagga Smith, like you said, just a better player off the bench. And that's kind of where he's suited best.
And in terms of Marco van Staden, of course, you're going to have him as your 6. Does Quagga come on as your 7 here, or does he come on as the number 8 to replace Jesper Wiese? Because
I would
in the last game when he played 8, it didn't look that great, did it? But then I guess it's one of those ones when you bring him off the bench, he's going to be a different level than that starting side.
I would say it depends. It really depends because there's a lot of ways that it depends kind of just in the context of the game, really. Because I think if the Boks are behind in this game, then what they could actually do is they may actually keep on Franco Mostert on, and then they'll bring on RJ Snyman and put Mostert to like, I don't know, the 7 or the 6, put Piusef in there, take off Khaleesi, take off Jesper Wiese, and just have a big kind of like lineup there, kind of just get back into it and just be physical in the way. But again, if they're in the lead and kind of in a comfortable position or just in the lead at least, then I think they'll just make the normal changes to kind of what you expect.
Well, you've got that versatility, don't you? Franco Mostert and Peter Steph both playing multiple positions.
They can play walk easily. So it's...
So even if
you can have 4 of them on the field if you want.
I was just thinking about another reshuffle. I was thinking Sia Khaleesi to 8. We saw it in the URC that he played. And
he's not an 8. He's not. No, I know he played there, but he's not an 8. Like I saw the highlights, by the way. He's not an 8. There's just players who are better suited in terms of ball carrying, and that's not Sia's like best attribute. He's not known as a ball carrier. What he's good at is just tackling the hell out of people, really, and he's just awesome in that. So, just keep him at 6, of course. In the way that they play, because this is the other thing that a lot of people still get it confused. He's technically kind of a 7 if you think about it in the way that they play it, but of course. Most minds see it as 6.
It is interesting how it is reversed, isn't it? Because theoretically, you could compare him to someone like Artie Savia, who should be playing as a 7 for the All Blacks. But then, like when you look at him and Sam Cane, they do seem like very different players in that regard in terms of that head-to-head. So, stylistically, I feel like there are certain players that match up better when it comes to that little Springbok switch that we do often see. But we've got the 3 back replacements for myself. You've only got the 2. Unlucky. Who have you got?
Well, in this place, of course, I have gone with Kobus Ronick. I've taken Jin Hendrickson off, which is, I guess, pretty harsh, I guess. But again, I want to see Kobus Ronick involved in this game. So that's the reason why I've put him off the bench here. And then, this is where I've gone with Willie LaRue. I think he's just a player that has to be in there. I think it's one of those where when you have someone like, you can put in Handre Pollard if you want, but honestly, I actually want to. I was really impressed by him, and again, he can cover a lot of positions. You can have Handre Pollard in there, guys. There's actually no problem with that. Like I can now easily put Handre Pollard in, no problem with that. But I would like to see Will LaRue in there, just because I feel like he just played like you said, he had a kind of a man-of-match performance, really. So I think he just deserves to come off the bench, and that's kind of just the way I saw it.
Well, I'm going to have to ask you some questions, Tim. So
yeah, go ahead.
Marnie Libok, if he gets injured, Who's your 10 and who's your kicker?
Willie would shift to the 10. That's 100% because that's kind of the way I planned it. And then you're then going to have you have a number of options there. You can put you can do Cheslin if you need because he's kicked in the past. You could. I think Fassi has kicked actually. For the. I remember this back to the Sharks days when he was in Super Rugby. He has kicked it once or twice. And then who else is there? Who's my number 9? You had Kobus.
Yeah, you've lost Hendrickse for those 9s, you see. So you don't.
Yeah, so it's one of those where either way, this is all hypothetical. I want Willie LaRue in there. That's the main thing. Willie LaRue, I just think he just deserves the play. That's kind of the reason why I did it. It's not literally, guys. You can have 100 Pollard in there, no problem with that at all. Put 100 Pollard in there, and I'm happy with it. I just want Willie LaRue because I just felt he had a better game. That's literally it.
And I have backed him in this game. I've got number 23.
I'll have to say, there's times you were against him, I would say, but
I've decided to give him that chance. That will be cap number 99 as well. So I feel like Rassi in the back of his mind, yes, he'll have certain changes that he wants to make, but this might be Willie LaRue's last chance in terms of a tour to get to his 100 caps, depending on what they look at in the future. I would like to see him in July next year in the Rugby Championship, but we just don't know whether there will be an injury or whether he'll hang up the boots or anything along those lines. So I've gone with him at 23. Number 21, I have, of course, got Grant Williams as my replacement, the super sub of the backline. And then number 22, I have gone Andre Pollard. You mentioned about how you could go with him. Maybe you should. Yeah. I did. I've given him that chance at number 22. But overall, I think our sides are pretty similar. But then that is because Rassi... In the past, he has gone with very much the split squad kind of mindset. So I'd like to think we'll get a few right, at least out of all these players. But the question is, Tim, when is the team actually going to be announced?
I would like to think, this is the thing. The game has been played on the Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. So I'd like to think the team would be announced on Thursday, I'd say UK time.
Ooh, you don't think he's going to go with the early kind of Tuesday announcement that we've seen in the past?
I'll be surprised, but I think just because we're in the autumn nations, I think it just may change, I guess, the thinking of Rassi and kind of when he announces these sides. We'll have to wait and see, but you never know. If he puts on a Monday or Tuesday, then that's expected, but I wouldn't be surprised if he puts on the first.
Just like all the other teams as well. We did see a little bit of a delay for Scotland in that last game. England normally, they sometimes like to go quite early too, don't they?
Oh, they were the earliest. They were the earliest.
We might actually see both sides go tomorrow in terms of their lineup. But of course, once we know it, we will be letting you know. But thank you all very much for tuning in. Do let us know who you think Rassi will go with in his 23-man side for this upcoming match up against the English. A big thank you to Rugbyitch for coming on yet again. His link will be in the pinned comment as well as the description. Thank you all very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. And we will see you all for the next one.